So here I am expecting an Aussie accent, and I'm hearing what sounds more like an American accent. What's up?
Yeah, I'm originally from Chattanooga, and I don't have much of a Southern accent either. And I ended up, I kind of have this philosophy that I don't want to look back at any point in my life and wonder, what if? So I had the opportunity in late 2009 to relocate to Perth, Western Australia. And I took it and have been here, almost to the day, 16 years.
Oh my gosh. Western Australia is absolutely all the way to the west?
Yes. Yeah. Like people, you'll hear about everything in the news on the East Coast because everyone forgets about us over here. So if you're looking at the map of the U.S., we're kind of where Los Angeles would be, but maybe not quite that south.
Gotcha. Now, where is Melbourne? Because I always hear that Melbourne is like one of the best food cities in the world.
100% it is. That's over east. That would be U.S. map. I'm not great on Australian geography, even though I've been here 16 years, probably closer to like Savannah, Georgia, kind of over in the south part of the East Coast.
Okay. And utilizing the United States as our map profile in our heads, where would Sydney be?
I would say probably like Washington, D.C.
Okay. So almost due north of where Melbourne is?
Yes. Yeah. So it's up the coast. And then Queensland would be kind of like the New England area.
Well, okay. So being in Australia, did you have to get a special visa to live there? Or are you a citizen of both America and Australia?
I am. I'm a dual citizen. I got a visa because my original career path was as a registered nurse. So I used my nursing, got a visa working in the healthcare field and became a citizen a few years after permanent residency.
Wow. Okay. So you've been there 16 years. I have to ask, and I hate to bore people with this question all the time, but what was going on there during the COVID for you in Australia? It sounded like from what we read and understood was that it was really, really difficult.
Well, it was difficult across the globe, 100%. And at that time, I actually wasn't working in healthcare. So I didn't, I wasn't one of those frontline workers working out in the trenches, at least not a lot. I did a few shifts, but Western Australia had probably, and I say this with a lot of pride, probably one of the best responses to the pandemic across the globe. At the time, our premier, which would be like a governor, he shut the state down. He stopped everything. And you can do that in Australia because we don't have the interstate system like the U.S. does. There's basically like one or two roads into the state, and that's it. We're so isolated in Western Australia. Most people in the U.S. couldn't fathom how isolated we really are.
I see. So you were kind of locked down within all the states, all the residents within each state was locked down?
We had, really good response to it. We didn't have a significant number of deaths. We still did. It was still very tragic. We still had a lot of people, very ill. I ended up with COVID and it was not fun. But yeah, we had a good response. And I think it was a really good model for the future if anything like that was to happen again. You just shut down flights, shut down the traffic into the state. You really had to have a reason to be coming here to get into the state.
Now, how long have you been a nurse?
I have been a nurse for 22 years this month.
Okay. That's something that you've been doing for a long time. And what else is it that you're doing that is maybe food related or kitchen related that we're going to talk about today?
Well, about 3.5 years into my nursing career, I worked in critical care, and that is a very intense field. And so I reached the point of burnout. And I am kind of like that Meryl Streep character, Julie and Julia, when her asked, "What do you like to do?" And her response was eat. And I'm like, that's me. So I went to culinary school. I left nursing. I went to culinary school and started working in professional kitchens in Kentucky and Tennessee for a few years. I learned so much, and it was really fun too because it was attached to the local high school as well. So this poor chef instructor had me, my husband at the time, and our daughter as students in the culinary program. We all became chefs.
Oh, well, you said your husband at the time. Did he drop out or what happened there?
Well, he's no longer my husband.
Okay, but he's still a chef.
I don't know if he's still working in the kitchens anymore. I haven't talked to him in years, but no, he did go on and he worked professionally. We both worked professionally in kitchens together, in some of the same restaurants, in Kentucky in a little small town called Owensboro, which is where his family's from. And then we also worked in a few restaurants in, Chattanooga, my hometown.
I want to let your story unfurl naturally and organically, but I'm going to feed you a couple of lines that'll help you get there. Take me back to the chair. What did the little you, Kimberly, understand about food that the adult you is still chasing?
Food is fun and food is love. Yeah. I, one of my earliest memories is standing on a chair in my grandmother's kitchen. I called her Nana on a Sunday morning. And we were making breakfast and we were making biscuits and, biscuits and gravy, one of my all-time favorite foods. I think it's because my mother ate them a lot when she was pregnant with me. But I had my own little pan and I would make a biscuit man. So he had a little biscuit head, little body, little legs, little eyes and mouth. And I had my own little pan for my own biscuit. And we would make biscuits and eggs and gravy and bacon and the whole Southern breakfast on Sunday mornings together.
A lot of people in the United Kingdom don't understand the whole biscuits and gravy thing here in the United States at all. They just can't get that.
They don't understand it here either. And I have to tell you, when my former husband still lives in Kentucky, but my current husband is Australian. And on our first date, I was explaining to him biscuits and gravy and how I missed it so much because back then in 2010, bacon in Australia is different, and having to learn to cook with a lot of different ingredients has been a bit of a challenge. But, there wasn't bacon. It was what we would in America consider Canadian ham was Australian bacon. And I said, there is this one butcher in the suburb that does make American bacon. And, because you need to render that fat to be able to make your gravy. And I said, but, it's kind of far away and it's very expensive. And about a week later, he called me and he said, come over, I have something for you. He had gone to this butcher and he had bought me a kilo of American bacon. I knew right then that this was the man that I was going to marry.
That's awesome. People who are aware of American bacon, it's made from the pork belly. The kind of bacon that exists where you are in Australia and in the United Kingdom is cut from the loin, cross cuts of the pork loin. So it is more like a ham product than the bacon we are aware of, right?
Yes, but they have come to understand the joy of bacon, and you can now you can buy what they call streaky bacon in all the grocery stores now. So I can now very easily make biscuits and gravy. And having to explain to him what biscuits and gravy was, because his first thought when I said biscuits was a cookie. I'm like, no. It's kind of like a scone. Yeah, it's kind of like a scone, but not really.
Right. It's a lot kind of fluffy, not as dense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, you said in your bio that your Nana was not a perfect cook, dry cornbread, over-browned edges, but she clearly imprinted something deeper in you. What did she give you that had nothing to do with technique?
Just the love of her family. It was being together in the kitchen, cooking. That was what we did. When I was a child, I spent every weekend, from Friday night to Sunday afternoon with my grandparents. And we would cook, Friday night, we would, whether it be, making, popcorn to watch a movie, Christmas time, making fudge, Thanksgiving, making, dressing. We didn't make stuffing. We made dressing, which is like a baked version, making, potato salad. And, we would go and spend time together eating this food. We would either have a meal around the table or when I remember when I was a little girl, we would go on picnics and basically we would, make some, potato salad, some sandwiches, and we would literally just go out in her backyard with a blanket and have a picnic.
The American South is just so fantastic. Everybody's such a character there. And I never knew the difference between stuffing and dressing until you just mentioned that there was a difference. I just thought it was a choice of words.
No, it is completely different. We like putting this into the turkey and baking it. I'm kind of like a huge Alton Brown fan. And he's just like, stuffing is evil. And I'm like, yes, it is. You don't do that. And she had this monstrous big silver pan that she would use to make the stuffing. And it was, cornbread and bread. And she had to have a specific type of chicken stock or chicken broth. And she had to have the right type of seasonings for it, her rub sage, and it took a whole lot of it. So she was very particular. And I think that's probably something that I've taken from her because I'm incredibly particular in the kitchen.
Uh-huh. Now, growing up in the South, every Southern family seems to have a culinary lie they tell to save face. Was outside pepper the moment you realized adults just make stuff up?
100%. 100%.
Tell us about that.
This was such a great story. So this was Thanksgiving, and I was living in Charleston, South Carolina with my first husband and our kids, and my grandparents came down for Thanksgiving. She made the turkey, and it was lovely. It was great. There was no problem with it. She always made a good turkey. It wasn't dry. It was wonderful, but it was a bit spicy. She said, she would not admit that she put too much pepper on it. That must have been outside pepper instead of regular pepper. I'm like, okay. I just kind of looked at my husband and we just like, okay.
Outside pepper, would that mean in her mind that was the outside of the peppercorn, or what does that really mean?
I don't know what she meant. We just like, okay, we'll roll with that one. That's good. But yeah.
That's wild. Now, tell us what Fifth Fork is.
So Fifth Fork is a kitchenware brand that I founded because I grew up with this intense love of food and being around family. And my favorite thing was, to entertain my family and friends, have them over, cook for them, and just gather together. For me, kitchen is 100% the heart of the home, and it is where the memories are made. If I think back about my childhood, I immediately go to holidays, special meals around the table, all of that. And I wanted to create something that could bring some joy to the kitchen. So, I kind of have a little bit of as we say in Australia, a cheeky attitude, and put a little bit of a fun spin on the kitchenware that I create and design. So we put a little bit of joy into the kitchen because everyone does want a beautiful kitchen, but it should also be a place to have fun. If you're making these memories with your family, you want them to be a good time and have fun doing the things together.
So Fifth Fork is creating products. Tell us a little bit about a few of the top products that you make.
So my hero product is our canister set for coffee, tea, and sugar. And they have little cute phrases on them. They don't just say coffee, tea, and sugar. Like the sugar canister says, "Give me some sugar." So that's a very Southern expression to say. But people in Australia love it too. So it's very popular. I also have a cookie jar and a flour canister, and then we've got a lot planned for the upcoming year with some new products.
Some products are cheeky with wording and that kind of thing, and they're also useful and beneficial for working within the kitchen.
Absolutely. I created this first product, the canister set, because I was frustrated trying to find a canister set myself. I found one that I thought was okay, but it was metal. And after a time, taking the lid off and on, the paint is scraping off. And I'm like, okay, I don't want paint chips in my coffee. I don't want paint chips in my sugar. So yeah, I just decided that I needed to create something that would give some personality to the kitchen, but would also be really functional and durable. So it's made from really high quality ceramics with a good airtight lid on it. I actually had one customer message me and she said, "I was so impressed with the seal. I filled it up with water and turned it upside down." I'm like, that's amazing.
You have to have a good seal if you're going to be making kitchen products that are going to hold on to stuff so they don't spoil, right?
Absolutely. The quality of your food is directly impacted by the quality of your ingredients. Even someone with modest or not great skill can cook a good meal if they're using good products.
And when did you found Fifth Fork?
Founded in 2019.
And how's it been doing? What's the reaction been like? And where are most of your customers?
Most of my customers are in the U.S. I do sell some of the products here in Australia, but it's a much smaller market. So I'm focused on the U.S. And the reaction has been really great. People love the products. I get photos from customers all the time of their canister sets in their coffee bar area and the cookie jar with it. And they love it. And it's really, it makes me feel great because, it's an original design. It's a patented design. So it makes me feel like I am spreading that love and that joy of cooking into other people's kitchens.
Now, Kimberly, as a chef, are you like me in that you love to cook, you love to please people and make them delicious things and show them the love through the food? But do you allow anyone in your kitchen when you're cooking? Because I don't.
I try not to. I do. I'm very particular, and it's, my husband will help some. And, I've talked, there's a lot of competition, food shows. And, there's one here in Australia called My Kitchen Rules. And it's always a couple, a team of two that compete. And, we watch the show together and I give my opinions on what they're doing wrong sometimes. But you're doing you're feeding, 200 people. Don't do something where you have to make egg rolls and like roll everyone. That's like silly. No, getting back to your original, it blows my mind. But getting back to your original question, he's like, no, we could never do that because we would argue. So he does help, but he also knows that a lot of times I'm just going to shove him out of the way and I'm just going to handle it and I'm going to manage it all. And I'm very good. Like when we have a big event like Christmas, I plan out everything. I timeline it, when I need to do what, where, and what needs to happen. So I stay very organized in the kitchen. So I can typically pull it off without very much help.
I've always been thinking about what would be the best ways to keep people out of my kitchen when we have companies. It's a toss-up between police tape and velvet rope.
That's great. You see, our kitchen is a big open floor, kitchen, but the actual where the cooking happens is like a galley style in between the island and where the cooktop is. And yeah, I could definitely see some police tape going across the corners there. Yeah.
Now, you said you reached critical mass in nursing some years back. What does burnout feel like in the body of someone who's used to taking care of everyone else?
Yeah, it's hard to describe. I mean, you just feel like you just can't take another step. You just can't go anymore. Everything, you don't want to do anything. You just have to stop. And I realized, pretty early on, I shifted to a different part of the hospital, but it just wasn't as satisfying. And I just didn't feel like it was the right fit as far as nursing. And I just realized that this still isn't enough. I need to step away and do something that I love.
Is nursing something that you would get out of if Fifth Fork really took off?
That is the goal, is to 100% retire from nursing, to keep my nursing registration active, just because I'm very practical. And it's like, let's not let it go away. And so, I do work the occasional shift here and there. Typically, no, it's not my passion. Cooking is my passion. Being able to share that joy of cooking and that love of cooking with other people is really fulfilling. So yeah, Fifth Fork is the aspiration, to be able to grow that to the point that, I guess I'm kind of a global jet setter. I would love to move to the mountains of northern Spain. So, if Fifth Fork could take me there, that would be amazing.
Let's hope so. You mentioned earlier that you're cheeky and perhaps a bit too opinionated for professional kitchens. What's an opinion that got you in trouble at any time?
Didn't really get in trouble with my opinions in the kitchen other than, I've pretty much followed the chef. I mean, when you're in a kitchen, it is definitely, there's an order to it, and you need to do things the way the chef wants you to do them. They've been doing it longer than me. And so I've always been able to realize that I can learn something from anybody. I could even learn something from someone who has less experience. They may have some novel experience that I don't have. So I always tried to follow their lead and learn from them as much as possible.
I want you to give me your I'm not okay dish versus I'm back dish.
Okay, I'm not okay. That would probably be just something really basic and simple like quesadilla or basic tacos, just something really simple to put together.
Okay, now what's your I'm back dish?
Well, Christmas this year was really good. In Australia, I still can't get used to having Christmas in the middle of summer. It was particularly hot that day. But we did a whole seafood spread. So we had, craytails and scallops and oysters, and I did a lot of salads, some vegetable salads, charred corn salad, and so. Yeah, my husband was very happy, and so was I. We had a great meal.
Is this the same husband who used to reach for the salt shaker before he tasted your food?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I've trained that out of him.
Good on you.
Yeah, I still will give him the side eye every now and then because, cooks, some sort of dish and he'll go immediately for the hot sauce to go on the meat. And I'm like, what are you doing? That is perfectly seasoned in the way it's supposed to be. But
I love speaking to chefs and their reactions to how people approach their foods. I want to get into your Tennessee roots and your Perth reality because those things are a little bit different, but it's sounding like to me that you make a lot of American South dishes still in Australia all these years later.
Yes, I do. And it's a challenge. I mean, they don't know what grits are. And I'm just like, I can't go and buy, a bag of stone ground grits. I had to buy quite a few containers of grits from a company here in Australia called USA Foods and have it shipped over from over east. And yeah, I still have a few containers of it definitely stored in my freezer so I can have it when I need it, because that's not something I can get.
Now, I'm imagining that you probably smuggle food from the United States to Australia when you go back and forth. What would be your top product there in smuggling?
At one point in time, I would have said ranch dressing mix, but I have actually developed my own recipe as a substitute for that. And it's actually pretty darn good. So I was like, okay, I don't need that with all the preservatives. I'm really big on the whole food kind of thing with natural ingredients and not as few preservatives and processed food as possible. So I think the big thing would be pumpkin. And that's, cause pumpkin pie was one of those things that my grandmother was renowned for. And in fact, my grandfather never told his mother this, but he really didn't like her pumpkin pie. He liked my grandmother's so much better because my grandmother actually put enough seasoning into it. And most pumpkin pie recipes I find don't have enough, nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger. So they don't have that adequate amount. But having pumpkin to make pumpkin pie is a bit tricky. And I actually had some friends go to America and they said, what can we bring you back? I said, just bring us back a can of canned pumpkin. Bless their little cotton socks. They brought back a professional kitchen size number 10 can of Libby's pumpkin for me.
You want to keep those friends?
They are very good friends.
It's always weird to me that people make pumpkin pie still to this day out of cans instead of getting pumpkin or some sort of squash in their produce section and then doing it all from scratch. But I guess it's just asking people to do a little bit more than they're capable of.
Well, and that's what I do here. In Australia, we eat pumpkin as a side dish. And to explain, every time I've had people over and have pumpkin pie, like we've done a Thanksgiving a few times, serving pumpkin pie, people just kind of look at it and they're like, I don't know about that, because they don't understand that it's sweet. To them, pumpkin is a savory side dish, like any other. In the U.S., I never was able to find pumpkin outside of we had butternut squash and we had acorn squash, but no one ever taught me that you could use those to make pumpkin pie. And that's what I do here. I typically will use butternut squash, or one of the Japanese gray pumpkins are a little bit sweeter, and they do a good job of, roasting that and using that when I don't have the 10 pumpkin. And it's just, the 10 pumpkins just, it's easier, but it actually turns out a little bit better when you use the fresh, as you would expect.
Yeah, I love pumpkin for pumpkin curry, like Indian dishes, more so than the sweet American pumpkin pie type flavor.
The Indian food in Australia is outstanding. There's so many different restaurants that make amazing Indian food.
Right. One of my favorites, definitely. Now, I want to ask you again about your products at Fifth Fork. Is there a product that you designed or made or came up with because you're basically fed up with what already existed?
Pretty much most of them. Canister set store. And I've got one in development now that is a jar for olive oil. I like to have, my oils and my salt and my pepper right by the stove, where I need them. And it took us months to find a salt and pepper well that I liked enough. So I've also got that in development. But the olive oil is a big one because so many of the jars for olive oil or any oil, they have the little metal spouts to them. And those typically don't work that great after a while. And they're very frustrating. So I've got a little different spin on my olive oil jug that I think is going to be not only look really great, but be a lot more functional. Because that is I'm not going to make things that are just good looking and make your kitchen pretty. They have to be functional. I have a really high standard for that. I have a high standard for everything in the kitchen.
So you did mention the northern mountainous area of Spain. So you must have been there before. Otherwise, it must be from something else.
No, I've never been there. It's just doing my research and looking at areas of the world that, number one, I could move to, and number two, have the climate that I'm after and have really good food. And I've studied Spanish most of my life. I studied Spanish in high school and in college, and I'm a huge Duolingo person now. And so I do my Spanish every single day and really want to be able to use that skill. So I was like, that would be a lot of fun to go there. But the food scene in the mountains there, the ingredients that they have available to them, just really get me excited.
For anyone who loves to eat and appreciates fine food, definitely Spain is one of the top places, and you're not so far from France either. And so, it'd just be a fantastic thing for you to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And my husband, he's like, yeah, I could do that. And I'm like, okay, good. He doesn't speak Spanish. I'm like, that's okay. I can translate for you.
Right. And nowadays with the technology, all you have to do is speak into it in your language and hold it up to them, and they can speak into, you can have conversations now with translators.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that was how I got through quite a bit of my journeys in China when I went to the Canton Fair and to visit our factory that makes our ceramics. And there are a lot of people there that don't speak English. And so some do, but that was really very useful and so simple these days to do.
So Kimberly, we're talking about food this whole time. So I have to ask you, what have you eaten today?
So far, because it's morning for me, so far I've only had coffee, but I will tell you what I had last night. Yesterday was Australia Day. So that's kind of like our version of the 4th of July. So I was like, all right, let's get very American. Let's do hot dogs. And I can't actually get hot dogs here. Most Australians would do sausages. I'm not a huge sausage fan. But yeah, I will have a hot dog every now and then, a chili dog, but I can't get hot dog chili. In fact, you can't really get any kind of chili here unless you make it. So I made my own hot dog chili, and I made my own baked beans, and we had hot chili dogs and baked beans last night to celebrate Australia Day.
Are there enough Americans or people with the palate from America to where you might be able to open up that serves American fare like that?
There are a few places already. Like there's a couple of, I've not been to all of them yet, but there are a couple of really good barbecue places. Barbecue is getting really popular here. Not so much Mexican cuisine, which is, something that I love. I mean, it's kind of my go-to cuisine, Mexican or Italian are kind of where I land. But yeah, I think a lot of there are a few Americans here, more than most people think. Most Australians are kind of like, oh, you're American. I'm like, yeah, there's not many of you here. I was like, oh, there's more of us than you think. But yeah, they are developing that palate for, the barbecue especially, and Mexican food. So they're, like when Taco Bell opened, it was a huge thing. And my husband's all like, oh, why don't we get Taco Bell? I'm like, no, I'll make you tacos if you want tacos.
Right. Now, what are some Australian foods that you've become acquainted with that you really enjoy?
I'm probably the only American I've ever met that likes Vegemite.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, it's unique, and you have to be educated on how to eat it or you will not like it. And I've heard people say, oh yeah, you spread it like peanut butter. I'm like, no, you don't. You take very, very little. I mean, Australians just put you have it on toast. And they'll put butter on their toast and then just the slightest little smear of it. I go a little bit heavier, and then I put cheese on it and let the toast melt the cheese. And yeah, that's a nice breakfast.
Wow. Okay, Kimberly, since you survived all my questions for the past half hour, it's time to turn the tables. You get to ask me a couple of questions, anything that you've been thinking about me or the show, and this will give you an opportunity to play and to poke around a little bit. So you're on.
Fantastic. So what is your favorite go-to dish when you want something quick but tasty?
I'll make a quick curry more often than not. Something with seafood or something with brisket or whatever. Everything for me is pretty easy. So when I'm in the kitchen, I'm in my Zen place anyway, so I never rush.
I completely understand. Yeah, I'll think something's going to not take a long time, and I end up an hour, prepping lunch. And my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm eating.
That's part of it. You're shopping and schlepping and prepping and cooking is all just part of my everyday.
100%. I hate to clothes shop. I love to grocery shop.
That's a destination for me. When I travel, it's always to marketplaces and places where I guess the regular traveler won't go to.
Absolutely. So following on with that, next question, what has been your favorite meal out when you've been traveling?
We went to a place, speaking of Spain, we went to a place in Barcelona. Disfrutar is its name. And we kind of discovered that some years back before they earned their Michelin stars. So I feel like I was a pioneer there. I kind of almost feel like I was part of the opening of that place. And that was just an amazing molecular meal. And I don't know how familiar you are with that, but it's an experience from an artistic point of view and also from a flavor point of view.
Yeah, I've always wanted to experience some molecular gastronomy.
Okay, Kimberly, before we wrap, I need one last thing from you because I answered your questions. Now I want you to put this all into an impromptu promo. a little teaser that I'll drop at the top of the episode, just a quick off-the-cuff elevator pitch, something like, hi, I'm Kimberly Lock, and on today's 50 Tastes of Grey with Matthew Gray, we spoke about this and that, whatever. And so yeah, just go ahead. You're on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kimberly Lock of Fifth Fork Kitchenware. And today on 50 Tastes of Grey with Matthew Gray, we talked about how I built this brand and also, no, I don't like that one. Let me start over.
Take two.
Yeah, take two. Hi, I'm Kimberly Lock. And today on 50 Tastes of Grey with Matthew Gray, we talked about my origins, learning how to cook with my Nana in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and how that has served me well as I have traveled the world and relocated to Perth, Western Australia, and all of the difficulties I've had trying to introduce Southern cuisine to the Aussies.
Perfect. Okay. Lightning round. What's a flavor you've outgrown?
I know this is lightning round, but sorry, I don't have one. I like everything.
Fair enough. What's a flavor you're still chasing?
Truffles. I love truffles, and I will have a truffle. In Western Australia, we actually have a lot of truffle farms around here. So in the autumn, truffle season is amazing.
That sounds fantastic. You just have to steer clear of any truffle oil because they're all just chemical flavorings and aromas.
Yeah, you got to get the real stuff.
You bet. Okay, what's a flavor that feels like home, even when you're so far away from it there in Perth?
Pumpkin pie.
Back to the pumpkin pie thing.
Sorry, if you want to do that again. Yeah.
What was that?
Alexa went again. If you want to ask me that question again.
What's the safe word there?
The safe word for her?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she has one. Let me just turn her down.
Okay. This is Kimberly turning off Alexa. I just did that on purpose. Just to...
She didn't hear you.
Okay. So now that Alexa has been safely turned off and she's not peeking in our conversation, I have to ask you, what's a flavor that feels like home, even though you're so far away?
Definitely pumpkin pie. My Nana's pumpkin pie will take me back immediately to Thanksgiving with her and my grandfather. That's a food and flavor memory.
Is there something that you top it with? Is there a perfect accompaniment to pumpkin pie?
A lot of people put whipped cream on it, and I prefer it just by itself.
Is there crust on that? And if so, what kind is the best?
Contrary to what my grandmother, she always just did a short crust pastry. I actually like to use ginger crisp cookies and crumble them and make a ginger cookie crumb crust.
Yum. That sounds great. I use ginger snaps and mustard to coat ham before I bake it.
Yum.
Yeah, so that's real good stuff. Kimberly, I hope you had a good time today. Thank you so much for visiting 50 Tastes of Grey.
I had a fantastic time, Matthew. It was wonderful to meet you. I really appreciate the time. And this has been a blast.
I'm so glad. Let's say aloha to everybody, shall we? Very nice. Look at you with the whole shaka thing. I like that. Where did you learn that?
Well, I've known that for ages. When I was growing up, one of my mother's good friends was from Hawaii, and they used to bring us macadamia nuts, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Here's something that'll blow your mind for a second. Everybody associates Hawaii and macadamia nuts, and the reality and the truth of macadamia nuts is that they're from where you are right now, Australia.
I know they are so prevalent here. But yeah, growing up, that was the thing. They always came and, it was a very expensive thing to get when you could find them. So when they would come to visit and bring macadamia nuts, we thought we were really special.
Well, you are very special. Thanks again for coming and spending time with me.
Thank you, Matthew.